Welcome to this video. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the investment in yourself, because what affects you affects us all, because we really are all connected. Today I would like to share with you my own little story, but I'm hoping that it will somehow help you in many ways. So a common theme that I've seen is that when we have a spirit of perfectionism, that it can actually be debilitating, and it can be a sign of a place where mental health needs to improve. So, for example, when we feel like we have to do something always perfectly, 98% is not good enough. It's not 100. An A- is unacceptable. Anything less than a 4.0 is inexcusable. All of these things, and many, many more things like them, can be a sign of a growth area where we need to have more acceptance. Now, certainly there are situations where perfection is of paramount importance. If you're a brain surgeon, or you are operating on someone in their eyes, you want perfection. You want as few mistakes as possible. But most of us don't live in that realm where perfection is of such a necessity that it will be of a detriment to someone else. So what I would like to share with you is something that I call spoon theory. So spoon theory says that even if something is imperfect, that it can be just as useful. So here is my story. Every year, right after income tax, depending on how much I get, I like to buy myself one thing that I would normally throughout the rest of the year never buy myself. It's my way of rewarding myself for my hard work, so that I don't just feel like I'm a cog in the wheel, going to work, coming home, and getting a paycheck. It's a way of saying, hey, Andrea, good job. You did good. You deserve something. And I believe that is healthy and good. So one year I had wanted really nice silverware. And I have lived in Europe for a long time. And while in Europe, I really became aware of how different silverware looked in Germany, and the shape of the spoons and the forks. And that may seem petty, but it's my thing, and I appreciate it. So I'm kind of right-brained in some areas, a little more dominant right brain, which means I kind of like the artsy type of things. Anyway, so I bought this silverware, paid a ridiculous amount of money for it, and when I got home, there was one spoon that was not perfect. It was not the exact shape as all the rest. So my first inclination was like, well, I'll have to bring that back tomorrow. But then I thought about my work schedule, and I thought, well, or sometime this week. And I looked at that spoon and I thought, oh, I was just so angry. I had worked all year to buy whatever it was that I wanted to buy for myself, and here I had this spoon. So I looked at that spoon with contempt, in all honesty. I had contempt for that spoon. So I kept the silverware, because as I was getting ready to grab the receipt, I felt from within my soul that I was to keep it. Call it God, call it the universe, call it inner knowing, whatever you want to call it. Within my deepest part of my being, I knew I needed to keep it. I knew there was some lesson in it. I had no idea what it was. I knew it was going to irritate me to pieces, but I knew I needed to keep the spoon. So I kept the spoon. I had it for years. And what I would do is whenever there was no more spoons left, then I would use that spoon. And when my grandchildren would come to visit, a lot of times they would make sure that when they helped me empty out the dishwasher, they would make sure that they told me they had indeed put that spoon at the bottom. So as I began to study psychology, I started to have a different relationship with the spoon. At times, I could even almost allow it. I would not have such a visceral reaction when I would see the spoon. So I had the spoon for years and years, and what eventually happened was I got conditioned to the imperfection of the spoon, which annoyed me like crazy in the beginning. The spoon was unacceptable. So one day, as I had noticed that I had been using the spoon more and more, I realized that this spoon could hold just as much as the perfect spoon. The imperfect spoon was just as functional for my uses, just as functional as the perfect spoon. So one day when I was putting away my dishes and my silverware, I looked down at that spoon and I began to cry. And I realized that that spoon that I had contempt for, that feeling of it not being perfect and it causing a reaction in me, was really an outward manifestation of how I was feeling inside. I expected myself to be perfect in every situation at all times. And when I wasn't, I was not as kind to myself as I should have been. So now I look at that spoon and I am so grateful that I listened to whatever it was that caused me to keep that spoon. Because now I feel so great within my own being, like I never have in all my life. And even though I'm in my 50s now, if I could go back and be in my 20s and feel like what I felt in my 20s, I would not do it. I would not do it, because to feel good in your own skin is something that we all deserve. So I ask you, if you're dealing with a form of perfectionism, to ask yourself, is it in situations where someone's safety or your own safety is really at stake? Then if it is, then please proceed on that route towards perfection. But if, for some reason, it's not about that, that it goes back to a core belief of having to always measure up or not being good enough, then I ask that you remember my spoons and notice that even though one is a little bit off than the other, they're both equally functional. And if you can't find the imperfection, then that's great. But if you can find it, then that just probably shows that much more that that's something you need to look at. And it is my sincere hope that you will look at that. And I know this video isn't perfect, and that's okay, because when I got this silverware, I had to be this spoon. I had to be. And now I realize all my life I've been this spoon, and it's okay.